Today we're talking about my all-time favorite Dungeons & Dragons class, the Wizard. Our top 3 classes video series comes to an end, and we have our very first dishonorable mention. You're going to want to watch this one.
I'm Joshua Tabletop. This is Jacob Tabletop. We are very excited to be finishing out our top 3 subclass series. This has been fun to do. It's been fun to engage in these conversations in our Discord. If you've seen a number of these, you know that we always say, hey, let's talk about this in Discord. Maybe you'll be the reason we choose something or not. Still join the Discord because we love talking about these things. You could tell us why we're wrong, or we could talk about future videos. So that's still a thing you should do, but not for this series because this is the final video, right? What do we do here? We give you our top 3 subclasses. We do them in alphabetical order. We're going to tell you what makes them great, why we chose them, and then at the end, and you definitely can't skip there with a little timestamp, but at the end, we'll reveal the order and give any honorable or dishonorable mentions. How do we do that? Well, we have a criteria.
The way we judge what subclasses we believe to be the best and most powerful is, number 1, we start with raw power, which typically has a combat emphasis. A very primary and legitimate way to pick a subclass is you want to feel powerful. So that's one of the big ones here. Number 2, we have it enhances what the base class does or is looking to do, and it does not take away from it either. And then last but not least, we're looking for subclasses where the mechanics fit the fantasy that it's selling you, and it just delivers on it in a very strong and meaningful and impactful way. In terms of things we're looking to avoid, number 1, we're looking to avoid overlap. So if we have multiple subclasses that basically do the same thing, we're just going to pick the best one, and then the others, we just throw them away because why talk about that? We're also going to be avoiding role-playing, and that's because every class we believe has fun elements to it in terms of RP, and we might use it as some kind of a tiebreaker, but it really is not a primary consideration. And then we're also avoiding multiclassing because that would really defeat the purpose of evaluating subclasses one-to-one if we don't judge them from top to bottom. So Josh, now that we've discussed how we have arrived at our conclusions, what is the first one we have for the Wizard?
We're going to start at the top. We're going to start at A, Abjuration. This is something that I've been excited to see in action in our Vecna Eve of Ruin campaign, as Milo Copperkettle is our Abjuration Wizard extraordinaire. Man, he's being put through the ringer, but he takes a licking and keeps on ticking. And part of the reason he's able to do that is the raw power of this subclass. Arcane Ward, and similarly Projected Ward. Super cool. It adds another layer of tankiness that the Wizard just frankly doesn't have. So when you cast an Abjuration spell, you also use a strand of the spell's magic to create a ward on yourself, and it's giving you, is it temp HP? Is that fair to say?
It can stack with temp HP.
Can stack with temp HP. Even better. But you get a ward that has a hit point maximum equal to twice your wizard level plus your intelligence modifier. So whenever you take damage, it actually takes damage from the ward itself, and whatever's left over, you'll take that damage. Projected Ward then expands that and lets you say, I'm going to move my ward to whatever person who just took damage. Now the ward's going to soak that damage instead. That's pretty crazy, honestly, because even something like say you hadn't put mage armor on or whatever you want to use. If you use counterspell, which is your reaction, boom, get that ward up.
Get the ward, yeah. The nice thing I like about that too is if things are going according to plan, which we know it doesn't always happen, but if the wizard is kind of in the back and not taking damage, they're able to use this resource to help the fighter or, the paladin, barbarian, whoever's up front. It's a very versatile feature once you can do that. And I know in 2024, they actually combined the projected part into that first feature, which I just think that's a good thing. And you can also recharge it by casting things like shield or other abjuration spells a little bit. It doesn't end up being like a ton, but every little bit helps, especially at high level D&D when you're just getting punished over and over again with poison damage. And you decided to play a halfling, not a dwarf. So I really like these features. In terms of enhancing what the base class does or is looking to do, I really like improved abjuration. This is a feature that's going away in 2024, but I think it just is really nice for things like counterspell and dispel magic. Is normally you just add your ability modifier to the check to try and, if you use the spell slot too low, you're to try and cancel the spell. Well, an abjuration wizard adds their proficiency bonus. I'm playing a level, well, Eve of Ruin starts at level 10. So my proficiency bonus is +4, and I already had a 20 intelligence. So I'm adding a 9 to every time I try and counterspell something. That's a very big difference. It almost makes you not, there's like, I don't even care what the spell's level is. There's a really good chance I'll be able to cancel it anyways. One thing that counterspell is trying to do is protect your allies. And this is another feature that really, it's just so thematic. I really appreciate it. And when you're going one-on-one with a caster, the abjuration wizards got a big leg up here.
I think that brings us right into delivery on a fantasy, right? Because part of that big leg up that they have is spell resistance, which gives them advantage against like saving throws for spells, and then they also get resistance to damage from spells. This is your mage's mage. This is your magician's mage. This is the person who knows magic. They know it very well. They don't just know how to use it. They know how to defend against it. It is defense against the dark arts, right?
Yes.
They're just really good. I think, especially in a campaign like Eve of Ruin, right, where you know you're going to be going up against at least one magic user.
Yes.
Probably many others.
Yeah.
It's a good one to have. And I think this really delivers on a fantasy of like, when you think of those spells like shield, like counterspell, like
bread and
mage
butter.
armor.
Yeah.
You're thinking of protection, protecting yourself and protecting others with your magic. And I think it just really hits the nail on the head, almost divinely so. Speaking of divination is next on
I
our
could
list.
tell where you were going.
Well, speaking of like, you can tell where we're going, right? That probably has a lot to do with the raw power of this class. Would you say so?
Yeah, when we talk about raw power of the divination wizard, it's actually my favorite mechanic in the game, and not necessarily because it's the strongest, but because it just takes the idea of seeing events before they happen. It just puts it so well. Everything in Dungeons and Dragons basically comes down to what this bad boy does, and this is the D20. So when your day starts, you're going to roll a couple of those, and you're going to write those numbers down. You get low numbers, that's good for when you cast magic and you want saving throws of your enemies to fail. And if you get high numbers, you can make your friends succeed. And basically, anytime you witness a D20 roll, you can basically say, I've seen this before, and you can replace the randomness of the D20 with one of those rolls that you've seen. And eventually, with greater portent, you're gonna get 3 of them. I think it's at level 14. But it's just, you have an ability to manipulate the dice as you see fit. And it's just, it's so nice. You could say, nope, hold person is working right now. Or, hey, paladin, you know how you want to spend a level 5 spell slot to crit something or to smite on something? Yeah, well, I rolled a 20 this time, so it's a crit. Don't even roll. Let's go. Like, it's just one of those things. And I know those are extremes, but like, you can start to control outcomes without having to worry about if the plan will succeed. You know it will. And that's very powerful.
Yeah, and when we talk about like our next category of enhancing what the base class is looking to do, expert divination is a perfect example, right? At 6th level, I guess, if you cast a divination spell of 2nd level or higher using a spell slot, you regain 1 expended spell slot, and it has to be of a lower level than the divination spell that you cast. But like, that's just wild. That's one of those spells, those abilities or features that I read, said, huh? And then reread, and I was like, no, I'm not missing anything. You literally, you get spell slots back.
Yeah.
And what could enhance the base class better than just getting more slots? And all you have to do to get those slots is use something from your school of magic.
Divination wizards, I mean, wizards are known for getting inside information with spells like scrying and, arcane eye, all these kinds of things. it makes the cost so much less if you're going to cast a level 5 scrying, but it's like, well, I'll still get a level 4 spell slot back. It's really not so bad. It's almost not even a cost at all. But when we come to delivering on a fantasy, I mean, not only do we have the greater portent feature, where now instead of having 2 uses of the portent that we talked about in raw power, now you're having 3. But we're going to talk about the third eye feature, which lets you get different things. Like you could have dark vision if your race doesn't give you dark vision. You could have ethereal sight and see into the ethereal plane. You could just read any language if you wanted. These are things that you could switch out on a short or long rest. You could even see invisibility. These are really, really nice things, and they all center around information and just knowing what is out there. It would have been nice maybe to see true sight as an option. I don't know. But at level 14, it's a little like, ooh, do we give him true sight yet? That's kind of, that's a powerful thing to have. But the fantasy is strong here, and it definitely delivers well.
I imagine divination wizards like Doctor Strange. I don't remember the specifics of all the MCU nonsense. Is there a time stone that lets him see things, and then like oh, this is where you have to be the one to snap your finger. I don't know, but that's kind of how I envision it. If you need a visualization, but yeah, I think it's very cool. I think our last choice, it's kind of a classic. Maybe all of these are classics, but when I think of wizards, I think of 2 things. I think of lightning bolt, lightning bolt, lightning bolt, but I also think of the stereotypical fireball, right? So the evocation wizard, that's not all they do, but that's a pretty big thing. When we talk about raw power for them, they get this ability or feature. I always say ability instead of feature because that's what they are too. Whatever. It's called sculpt spells. And while I can't say that 5 times fast, what I can tell you is that it is incredibly useful. Essentially, you are able to use a spell that attacks, like, say, fireball, right? Every creature within whatever radius. You can use that, but you can choose who's affected by it. So you could choose that your allies won't be affected by it.
Yeah.
And that changes things dramatically. That changes things tactically. If you're in a small room, if you're surrounded by enemies, but you're also in tight with your friends, like, this is that opportunity for you to use that big radius spell. Maybe you're in the back, you're hiding behind, the tanks, and you want to use Cone of Cold. You can do that, and your friends aren't going to hate you.
This is the town guard. We have you surrounded. It's like, surrounded, you say? I'll just cast it right on me. Yeah. Because you want to do all sorts of shenanigans that the town guard's going to come chasing you for. And rightfully so. But you can get out of it with this feature.
This is the feature for the Murder Hobo Wizard.
It's the kind of feature that it becomes so ingrained into the very fabric of what you want to do that I think sometimes it can be easy to overlook just how strong it is. In terms of enhancing what the base class is looking to do, I mean, you don't always use a spell slot, right? Sometimes you're casting a cantrip. That's something that a wizard does. And I like the level 6 feature Potent Cantrip. So when a creature succeeds on a saving throw against your cantrip, so if you take a spell like Frostbite, which its con save deals d6 damage, and I believe it inflicts disadvantage on attack rolls for the rest of their turn or the next one. It's something to that nature. Because it's a con save, a lot of times people are just going to go, well, it's a con save. Why would I ever choose that? Well, now you might, because you're still going to deal damage even if they fail, and even if they succeed on the save, and if they fail, well, guess what? Now they have disadvantage to hit you or a friend or whatever, and it just makes the reliability of your damage dealing, even on turns where you're not entirely sure if you're gonna, cast fireball. This is when you don't have fireball.
And reliability is really important. That's one thing that we always say about the fighter is, like, do they deal the most damage? Not per hit, no, but they deal the most consistent damage, and that makes them one of the best frontline damage dealers. Not necessarily frontline, but that makes them one of the best options if you're looking to be a striker. It's consistency, it's reliable. And when we talk about delivery on a fantasy, I think they kind of nail that, right? Like, we're making the jokes about fireball because it's always the one you make jokes about, but, like, all of these abilities really tie into that. Like you mastered destructive magic, and we didn't even talk about Overchannel yet. Overchannel, it's lets you choose. Was it up to a 5th level spell? I think 5th, right?
Yep.
You choose to deal maximum damage.
Yeah. Talk about reliability.
I don't need to say anything else about that. It is a guaranteed big boom and big damage.
Just looking at quick math, right? You drop a level 5 cone of cold, 8d8 cold damage. So instead of rolling, it's like, nope, it's 64. If they save, it's 32. I mean, it's a little low, but that's like a low average damage roll for cone of cold. And now that's what happens if they succeed on the saving throw. That's massive.
That is a really good way to look at them succeeding, right? Because how many times have I rolled? And I mean, most of the time when you roll, you're rolling average, right?
Especially with that many dice.
Especially with that many dice.
Yeah.
So that's really good. This is the section of the video where we like to talk about like accolades, honorable mentions, or in this case, a dishonorable mention. I think I'm going to let Jake. Why don't you go into this? Just tell me all about it.
I want to do this a little quickly.
Not to throw you under the bus. I agree. No. I just want to let that be known. I'm not putting this on him. I agree with this take.
Yeah. Okay, so many people that clicked on this video expected us to put Blade Singer in the mix, and I can't do it. One of the main things in our criteria is that the subclass is trying to enhance what the base class is looking to do and not take away from it. The Blade Singer, to me, and I'm just going to say it, is an abomination of a subclass for a wizard. It actively discourages wizards from being wizards. You pick up a spell book because you want to cast spells, not because you're going to be waving your sword at someone, trying to be a fighter or an eldritch knight or a hexblade warlock or anything like that. And it's also one of the most awkwardly designed subclasses in the game. If I look at a feature from the Blade Singer, like Song of Defense, where if I am going to take damage, I can use my reaction to expend a spell slot and reduce the damage by 5 times the spell level of the spell slot I expended. When you put that kind of a feature on the chassis of a primary caster, it's just awkward. What they should have done was just make a Spellblade or a Sword Mage like they had in 4E, or some kind of dedicated Magic Knight that would have actually filled the role that this subclass is trying to do. I am not saying that it's not powerful. If anything, I'm definitely saying it's powerful. So when I talk about it being a dishonorable mention, I just think it serves the game an injustice. And obviously, I would love to hear you tell me why I'm wrong in the comment section, but it's just how I see it.
Well, when we talk about like one of our 3 categories for deciding whether something is good or bad is, does it enhance what the base class is trying to do, or does it take away from what the base class is trying to do?
And that's the basis.
Blade Singer, exactly what you were just saying. It takes away from what the base class is trying to do. It doesn't add another option. It's basically saying, do this in place of this, which is not, whatever. You already covered it
Some
very
people
well.
may have heard me say Blade Singer sucks, Blade Singer isn't fun. I never said any of those things. I'm just talking about it from a design standpoint. Use that however you'd like. Josh, let's talk about our final rankings.
So starting from the bottom of the list, this is an interesting choice. And I think all of these are really, really good. I know we've said that a lot, but I really mean it this time. In 3rd place, we have Abjuration. And the Abjuration Wizard, there's like a big asterisk next to this. Because if you're playing in a campaign where you know you're going to be going up against casters, where you know there's going to be spell battles, like your wizard against their lich or archmage or whatever, this is number 1 in that scenario. Absolutely number 1. That resistance against magic, it's an always feature. It's not a once per day or once per short rest or whatever. That is something that is consistently incredible to have. I also think that this delivers best on the fantasy.
Yeah, I struggle with that one because for me it's either Divination or Abjuration. But I just, because I'm playing an Abjuration Wizard in our Eve of Ruin, and I do feel like this is meeting that so well. I'll just, if I have to pick one, I'm choosing Abjuration. Best delivery on a fantasy for me.
I'm with you on that, because I think that our 2nd place choice, which is Divination, I think the main part of their delivery on the fantasy is the portent. And this is another one of those things. It's consistently good, but is it ever great? I don't know. I think it's consistently very good.
Whereas the abjuration is going to be the best in those certain games, divination is always good in those games, and it's good in any game. You're always rolling a d20, right? So there's to be able to just manipulate and control that, it's always a good thing. But Josh, when you think about playing a wizard, you think about unleashing arcane power everywhere you go, making it rain d6s, and nothing is going to do that quite like the evocation wizard. When you really talk about just how much sculpt spells can truly alter the strategy, the fighter or paladin, barbarian, ranger, all these characters that are going to be up there dealing very consistent and good damage, right? You hit with great weapon master or sharpshooter, and it's like 22 piercing damage. Here we go. And it's like, okay, that's great. You can do that too. You're a fighter 3-4 times around. Well, I can do that to 7 creatures around me in one round. You know what I mean? Like, this starts to really, really alter the power of the wizard and the combat strength. And it's such a classic fantasy too. Evocation, so good.
Let us know. We really enjoy having these conversations about which is your favorite, what you think is best. If you agree with us, that's great. If you disagree with us, sometimes that's even more fun. You might convince us. But I do need to say, you won't convince us if all you say is you're wrong. The only thing I'll be convinced of is your lack of intelligence. So if you want to prove me wrong, I would love for you to do that. If you just tell me I'm wrong, you're an idiot. We'll do that again. This kind of feels like a goodbye. This is our goodbye to all the subclasses in 5th edition. 2014 5th edition, that is. You've been very good to us. Had some incredible moments. I'm very excited to see what we could find in 2024.
I'm fine. I'm excited to see what we can mix and match and make our games better. That's going to be a lot of fun. But thank you so much for watching. And like Josh says, let us know why you think what you think in the comments section below. Take care, everybody.